Welcome back, friends. Today we are going to do an inspiring collage. Let's get to it. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. I created these hands from the creation of Adam by Michelangelo, and I inserted in the gray areas some thoughts or affirmations about creating a good life. And I'm going to put the word create at the top. And it's going to sort of go off the edge like most of my artwork does. And that part I'll probably do with my Cricut. And you'll see that later on in the video. So on this particular one, in between the fingers, I want to do like bursts of color. So I had done this as a painting a few years ago, and I actually painted bursts of color in between the fingers. And the hands were done in fabric mosaic. So this is kind of taking that idea to another level. I just wanted to give this a try and make this a collage. So I'm going to cut out the hands and we're going to make a collage. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit because it's going to take me a while to be very careful and cut around each of the fingers. So I really love this, iconic image of these hands, and it's, from the Sistine Chapel. I visited there when I was probably 16 or 17, a high school trip, and oh my God, it was so fascinating as somebody so young and interested in art to be able to see the Sistine Chapel was just, life-changing. And of course I've seen it again since, but nothing was as exciting as seeing it for the first time. And so, when I was thinking of, doing a painting on create, I didn't want it to just be about creating artwork. Yeah, we're we're creators. We love to dabble and we love to, make new things. But in our own personal lives, if you're not an artist, I want this to be inspiring to you as well. And I want you to think of how you can create that unique life for yourself, a great life for yourself. And that's what this particular artwork is all about. That's what the phrases are inside there. I will put them in the description below so that you can read the phrases. So this is going a little faster than I thought, but I tried not to speed it up too much because I think sometimes it's probably you're missing a lot of stuff. So I use an X-Acto blade when I cut because I just think it gives me the precision that I need, and that particular brand really allows, control. And that red thing on the end just makes it so that it doesn't roll off the desk, because I used to work on a slanted drawing table, and I cannot tell you how many times I had to pick up my blade off the floor, and a couple of times it went smack into the top of my shoe. I'm lucky I still have all my toes. But anyway, it's a great little thing. I don't know, I've had it for so many years, I don't even know where you would buy it. I'll look for it online and see if I can find it for you. But anyway, here we go. So we're getting close to the end. I think I'm just gonna bring you to the end. So now that they're cut out, I mean, luckily I have other ones that I printed so that I can use those as a guide for how they should be positioned. And this is a deep cradle board. I got this one at Jerry's Artorama. It's called a Da Vinci panel. And I kind of like the quality of these. I think I'm going to start buying my panels there. Anyway, I have my gel medium, and the first thing I'm going to do is mount my hands. We're going to start there. And I'm going to use some freezer paper to help me burnish them down. So one of the things, I did a little bit of a test. I always do a test beforehand. And my inkjet kind of bled a little bit when I burnished the hand down on the board. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, and I'm going to try putting the freezer paper on top and burnishing, and hopefully that will minimize any kind of bleed, because I want to keep the white background as white as possible. And so when I mount papers to a board, I always put the gel medium down in both places. So I did mark off where the finger was supposed to go and where the wrist was supposed to go to help me position this correctly. And then I always put some more gel medium on top. And then of course you have to burnish it well. Get out all the bubbles. And I like these Princeton brushes because they really, I think it's called a poly tip. They really allow you to kind of push down and give you some nice leverage. Anyway, some of the ink did come off and there was some smear. Do you see that smear? Very frustrating. So I'm going to have to touch all of that up before I, finish this thing. So now we're going to go and do the other hand. I might find another way to print these without using inkjet. Maybe if I go somewhere and have a laser print done, but I don't like the look of laser prints usually. So that's why I did the inkjet. I'm even thinking maybe I'll have it printed on fabric, because when I do the fabric prints, they don't bleed. I get my fabric printed at Spoon Flower. I don't know if you've ever used Spoon Flower, but if you like really creative patterns, it's a great website where you can buy prints that were developed by other artists. So they have everything. It's like Christmas patterns and Halloween patterns and florals and abstracts and you name it, they have it. And you're supporting an artist when you buy from them. It's a fascinating website, and they even do wallpapers as well. The peel and stick kind of wallpaper. So anyway, I am tearing up some of my jelly prints, and I'm kind of trying to figure out what I'm going to do color-wise, and also, some of them I want them to kind of come to a point and they look like they're bursting from within the fingers a little bit out of the top, and also pooling down to the bottom. So some of these you might recognize. This was one paper. I hated cutting it up, but it was from my high flow on the jelly plate, and I got some very interesting prints from that. So I'm also going to introduce a little bit of that red throughout, that little burst of color. So I like what's happening so far. And you'll see, I changed my mind a lot. Keep changing my mind. So this project was meant to be a really fast project, but this is going to be a longer video because I really wanted to include all the steps. And there are many steps because it was the hand step, and then there's the jelly print step, and then we're going to get into the Cricut, because a lot of times I do these videos and I kind of don't show you the whole Cricut process. on this video, I'm going to include the Cricut process. And I'm going to put some chapters in here so you could skip. If you're not interested in the Cricut, just skip it. Not everybody wants to do a Cricut. I love my Cricut. And after I move into the studio, I'm planning to get a bigger one. I'm probably going to get a secondhand one. I think I'm done with buying brand new. You know, we could save a lot of money by buying things in Facebook Marketplace and those kind of places. So I think I have to be a little smarter now that I have to pay rent. Okay, so it's coming together, but I'm not exactly convinced that the bottom section yet, so I don't think I'm going to glue any of those down quite yet. Okay, so the ones on the top I was pretty sure about, so I'm going to get those down. I find that, you know, if I make some decisions, then it helps me make the rest of the decisions. Because a lot of times collage could leave you feeling like you don't know what to do next. And indecision can just really cause you to take a really long time with it, which is not good. Or just you can make some terrible mistakes and end up hating it in the end. Okay, so I've made some decisions, and it's still not 100%, but I kind of like the way the paper that's bending around there fit with those fingers. So I thought, let me get that in place, and let me get this other piece that's bringing that burst. It kind of pulls the burst up between the fingers. So that one's important. And that other one was also from when I did the high flow on the Gelli, and I really love all of the intricacies of the colors in that pattern. So I definitely wanted to use both of those. And I like how the high flow, because of the way that paint went under the stencil and around the edges and everything, it kind of adds to that idea of, you know, color bursting. So again, I'm making changes. Still not sure. I'm not. That top piece is not complete yet, so I still have to figure out what I'm going to do there. So I finally got this whittled down to the right shape that I needed for this spot. Very happy with that. And I'm just trying to incorporate a little bit of that red throughout. Okay, it is coming together. This is how I envisioned it. So I want to incorporate a little bit of a darker teal color, so I think that something from within that sort of green, gold, and teal half of the, I'm going to do little skinny pieces to get more of that burst feel. So it's important when you're working on, I think anyway, it's important when you're working in collage to work with different size pieces. So you want to have some bigger pieces, some smaller pieces. You want to have a variation. If everything is sort of the same size, if they're all big or if they're all small, it just doesn't work, in my opinion. There might be exceptions to that rule, I'm sure, but in my opinion, you need some variation, especially in this type of torn paper collage. Now, maybe if you were doing a grid, then your grid is all the same size. That could be interesting. But then, if you were doing something like that, you'd want to maybe have papers that have variation within them. So, like the pattern could be small on some of the squares and larger in some others, but you always have to have variation, I think. So we're getting a little bit better here, and I want to have two little pieces coming out, like right where the fingers are, like two little bursts coming out of the bottom, trying to make their way, that little spark. It needs that little spark. Okay, so now we can glue some more. I love this darker piece. And so for this particular piece, it was important for it to have a lot of movement. And so I think that those three at the top really add to that, and these little tiny red pieces. And of course, some of the papers that I used had a lot of movement in them as well. So I haven't mentioned this earlier, but I might be putting resin on this piece. So when I'm finished with it, I'm going to be putting like 2 coats of GAC 200 so that it really seals the paper. So now we're going to do the create at the top, but I've got to clean up my background. So I'm going to get some white paint, and I'm going to touch up those areas where the inkjet dried or smeared, and I'm also cleaning, trimming that paper on the sides. Okay, so I'm taking some white paint. This is titanium white, and I'm just going to, it's fluid paint, so it's kind of thin. I'm going to make sure that I touch up all the areas where some of the ink from the inkjet smeared onto my pristine white background. So I'm just making my background a little whiter. It's slightly whiter than the gessoed board. And I like to use these flat brushes. I think they're called Brights, because then you get that nice flat edge that you can get right up against things, and you can even use the corner, the tip of the brush, like I am here, to really get in close. probably 90% of my brushes are brights. I very seldom buy like a round brush, or like, I don't even think I know what the other ones are called because I've been using these brushes for so long. I'm just making sure I'm getting every single area. So when you're painting the same color, you know, like this white on white, sometimes you have to hold it up to the light to see if you missed any spots. And I'm also being really careful not to go over the paper on any of it. Okay, so I'm going to seal it now. I don't know if you call this GAC 200 or GAC 200, whatever you want to pronounce it. I just pour it on and then brush it. So I'm using one of these chip brushes from, you know, the hardware store. The only bad thing about these is every once in a while you'll lose a hair and you gotta pick the hair off. So you have to be really careful when you're using them, but I do like the brush strokes that it gives because the hairs on it are kind of random in size, and it does give you nice brush marks. And I have to make sure I seal the entire thing really, really well, because if I'm going to put resin on this, the resin can seep under the paper if it's not sealed good. So I'm probably going to have I'm going to do one coat, then I'm going to put the word create at the top, then I'm going to do a second coat that goes over the word create as well. So that was coat number one. We'll let that dry. Okay, so I'm in my Cricut Design Studio and I click New Project, and now we are going to just use the Type tool and type the word create. I decided I wanted all caps. So now I'm going to highlight my text and I'm going to find my font. It's in my Systems fonts. I think it's pronounced Hofler. It's a nice serif font. I use it for all of my paintings. And then I'm going to turn it sideways. So I know that I need it to be 8 3/4. So I'm typing in 8.75. And now I'm going to rotate it so that it'll fit on my Cricut Joy. And I'm going to eyeball it somewhere in between the 4.5 inches that I need to cut from within. So if you look in the upper right hand corner, you'll see just the word create, and it's just one layer. So that means we can just make it. We don't have to worry about welding or clicking unite or anything like that. We could just click make it. So I'm doing this on a mat, and I'm going to use removable vinyl. So again, I'm eyeballing it to make sure it's in the center. And it's detecting my Cricut Joy. And now I'm going to pick premium vinyl. I'm going to leave the pressure at the default because this is just, you know, a Cricut product. It doesn't need any special treatment. So then I have to put my mat in, and it detects whether or not there's enough space, you know, to cut this. And then we click go. So then we unload, of course, and then we save our project. I always save them because I may want to do another one with the word create, and I've already got it. Okay, so now I have my create cut out, and I'm going to trim a little bit of the paper around it, and I'm going to also put my transfer paper on top. And I'm going to weed it. So weeding is when you pull the paper out from, this is the part that we're going to paint. And I just use my X-Acto for that as well. You know, X-Acto just fits in my hand. So I'm taping it down to my board. I did sort of line up the word create with those lines on my board. And now I'm going to put some transfer paper over this entire thing. And I'm going to try that grid that's on the transfer tape. I'm going to try to make sure that that's lined up with the bottom of my letters. It will help me make sure that I get this correctly on my board. So I always get the corner started, and then of course I struggle, but I eventually get it. So I wanted to pull enough, but see how I'm lining up that line across the bottom? And I'm going to use my stiffer burnisher to help me get it down without any bubbles. Now I'm going to trim off the excess. And then I like my letters to go off the top of the board, so I am going to trim the top part off completely, and I'm going to use that cut line to go right to the edge of my board, and it will be straight. So all I have to do is make sure that I have my center point, and then I mark it, and then I'll mark the center point of my board, just double checking the center. Mark the center point of my board, and now we have to take off the backing on the silvery vinyl. And this usually, in my experience, the vinyl that you get with the the regular vinyl, not this smart vinyl, this backing comes off super easy. The smart vinyl, it's a little bit more challenging. I don't know what the difference is, but the smart vinyl is a little harder to get off. So I line it up, and then I'm going to have to burnish it down, and then I have to take my transfer tape off. And I always pull from one side, and it just comes right off. Super easy. And now we can paint. But first we're going to seal it with some gel medium. This way we get nice clean edges. So you may have seen me do this part in another video, but I haven't shown the actual cutting in a while. And the nice thing about it is you could just create your word within the Cricut Design Studio, and you don't need any artwork or anything, just some beautiful type. So now I have some carbon black, and I'm going to use a small brush. My gel medium has dried, and I'm just going to put 2 coats. So this is my first coat. I want it to be nice and even, and especially since it's going over gel medium, it might be a little streaky. And I tend to always use fluid acrylics, so it could be a little streaky. That's why I do 2 coats. Okay, so we're going to wait for this to dry and then put on our second coat. Okay, and we're just going to speed through coat number 2. Okay, so now we're going to carefully remove all of our premium vinyl. It comes off pretty easy. But of course the openings, like within the C and the R and the A, they have to be picked at a little carefully because you want to make sure that you don't ruin your board underneath. And you don't want to chip at your paint either. So I noticed that even though I sealed my letter, my R was not properly sealed. So I'm going to have to touch that up with some white paint. So now I have some white paint on a really tiny brush, and I'm going to clean up whatever edges I have to touch up. So it was mostly on the R, just 2 little spots on the R. And I think everything else was good. Oops, sorry, I'm off camera a little bit. I think I was just trying to make something else a little bit cleaner. Almost done with my little touch-ups. There we go. So I'm really happy with the way this came out. I am just thrilled. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching the video and seeing a little bit of my behind the scenes way my mind works and my entire process, including the Cricut. If you want more Cricut videos, you need to let me know, because this isn't really a Cricut channel, but I like to show artists how they can use a Cricut to help them with some aspects of their art. It's definitely a tool we should all be using. So, don't forget, create, inspire, and share. And I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Testing. We're testing with the microphone, the Movo microphone fuzzy gray thing. Am I talking enough?